going to sign out and sign back in.
Hi guys, we're live at the Black Star International Film Festival. I go by the name Asi. I'm over here with the musical lunatics and my lovely BVs. The first song we're about to perform is I'm Awake. I wake up in the morning. First thing I do is pray. Then my path to be okay. Oh, I don't want riches, but it will come my way. I'm the brain to fully away. Oh, my mind understands the time. My forces have combined. Deep down, I was the lonely one. I was the bullied one. I was the different one. I was the rejected one. People pleasing one. Shy and timid one. But now, hey, hey, hey. But now, hey, hey. Oh, me, I, mama, me, I, mama. Oh, me, I, mama, me, I, mama, me, I, mama. When the holy is done, when the battle is lost and won, what would you say about my song? I say about my song. What would you say about my song? Oh, I thank God I'm fully awake. 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 Oh, yeah. Me, I, me, I, me, I thank God I'm full. Yes, my big, sing after me. Mia hekumaba. Mia hekumaba. Mia hekumaba. Mia hekumaba. Let's sing it a bit higher. Mia hekumaba. 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 I'm fully awake. I'm fully awake. I'm fully Mia hekumaba. Mia hekumaba. Mia hekumaba. Mia hekumaba. So the next song is called Good Vibes Only. I really love this song. It preaches positivity, happiness, and just manifestations of what you want in your life, you know? I believe you should say what you want in your life. Yeah, okay. So, Good Vibes Only. For this song, I really like it so much, so I don't want to use the stand. Allow the mule to take. Allow the mule to take control. Are you guys ready? Good vibes only. Yeah. Good vibes only. Good vibes only. Two good vibes only. Two good vibes only. Good vibes only. Good vibes only. Two good vibes only. Can you feel it in your soul? Allow the mule to take control. Two good vibes only, yeah. Two good vibes only, yeah. Good vibes only, yeah. Two good vibes only. Manifestation time. I don't want your negativity, only want positivity. Can't you see I'm happy? Leave me alone. Why do you wanna control the only thing that I owe? Two good vibes only, yeah. Two good vibes only, yeah. Good vibes only, yeah. Two good vibes only. Two good vibes only, yeah. Two good vibes only, yeah. Good vibes only, yeah. Two good vibes only. Come back to me, yeah. When you find belief, yeah. Mind has been freed, yeah. Two good vibes only. No one dare interfere, yeah. Baba blessings on me, yeah. Take your eyes somewhere, please, yeah. Two good vibes only. Two good vibes only, yeah. Good vibes only, yeah. Good vibes only, yeah. Two good vibes only. Two good vibes only, yeah. Good vibes only, yeah. Good vibes only, yeah. Two good vibes only. Close your eyes. Just good vibes, a better life, a liberated mind, expand my territory, know I'm my way, and my people are safe, and my people are safe. Come back to me, yeah, when you find belief, yeah, mind has been freed, yeah, two good vibes only. No one dare interfere, yeah. Baba blessings on me, yeah. Take your eyes somewhere, please, yeah. Two good vibes only. Two good vibes only, yeah. Good vibes only, yeah. Good vibes only, yeah. Two good vibes only. Two good vibes only, yeah. Good vibes only, yeah. Good vibes only.
Hey, good morning, guys. Robert Peters here. My day begins with a hot cup of green tea with lemon. Then I go for a 2 mile walk, and my house sits on an acre, so my work is fully cut out for me. I have been doing some reseeding and some aeration of my lawn. And in between that, I'm developing two scripts. One is supposed to be shot by the end of this year, and one early next year. So I've been working with two of my writers and reading script in between, reading some books in between, watching movies in between, and
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Well, just depends where you're watching us from. And this is a lovely day. Good vibes only. What a lovely, lovely song that was. And yeah, I'm glad to be here and joined by an amazing panel of speakers that are going to be contributing to this conversation. A much needed conversation, I must say. It's been long coming, and Africa has been part of that narrative that we're not fully participating on and not telling our own story as we would want to. And today we want to probably talk about how we can be stronger together as filmmakers in Africa. African Filmmakers Guide to Collaborating and Working Together. I want to thank everybody joining us right now. Either you're watching us right here on the Zoom platform, or you're watching us on Facebook or on the Blackstar Film Festival website. Thank you for joining us. It's my pleasure to be hosting and moderating this. My name is Nico Abote, and I want to introduce our panel here. I see Roberta Annan. I see Christian Apps there. Lolada is there as well. Who else is there that I don't see their name? But yeah, I'm gonna allow probably everybody to introduce themselves from our panel, starting with probably Roberta, just giving us a little brief about yourself, and then we go to Christian.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this panel, and welcome to everyone, the audience and our esteemed panelists, and of course to our wonderful hosts. Greetings from Accra, Ghana. So my name is Roberta Annan. I am Ghanaian. Lived in the diaspora as well. I went to school in the US, studied as a scientist, worked in the development with the United Nations for a few years, and then decided to come back on the continent to support, especially because my role I had at the UN was channeling capital, private capital, to solve some of the most challenging socioeconomic problems that developing countries had. I wanted to be on ground and to still use the network to bring some, resources to address some of these challenges. Since then, it's been almost 10 years since I left and started my own business. As challenging as it has been, there have been a few positive outcomes. And one of the key things that I want to discuss today on the panel is the creative economy, my work in the creative economy, the creative space, especially in the African context, and also, allocating the right resources and infrastructure to ensure that the creative economy grows, because I see great potential. And for me, as somebody who's an investment advisor and and also an investor in my own right, I see this as a gold mine, and with the right structure in place, we'll be able to use this as a tool for inclusive growth and development of our continent. So thank you again for having me on here.
Excellent. Thank you, Roberta. We're looking forward to talking about resources and funding the amazing work that we're doing. We have so many amazing stories that we haven't told about Africa and where we come from that the world needs to know. But yeah, let me move on to Christian. And thank you, Charles. I saw Charles. Yes, Charles is there. Yeah, let me go to Christian and then we'll move on to Lolade.
Okay, thank you for having me. My name is Christian Epps. I work as a director of photography and lighting in the film and television business. I'm from the US, raised in the Caribbean, and I spent about 15 years in Nigeria and South Africa and several other countries doing work on films and television and concerts. In the process, about 7 years ago, I started a nonprofit to develop some of those same structural institutions and systems that Roberta referenced. Primarily, our goal, and what I think I have the most to contribute to the conversation, is sharing skills from the US across sub-Saharan Africa. And the main, that's the day-to-day sort of psychology, the day-to-day practical practice. But the psychology, of course, is that such like the panel is named, we're stronger together, is that the best way to make use for all of us is to collaborate and take what is useful from wherever we are and contribute it to those communities. And so that's what I've been doing darn near full time for the last 7 years. I've done the first Netflix show in South Africa, the first one in Nigeria, HBO stuff, Netflix, all in terms of training and connecting practical filmmaking skills for Africans on the continent with those skills that come from this part of the world. And so those are the two sort of worlds that I try to run in these days, the practical skill sharing and the thought process behind how we collaborate and connect people like those on this panel who can really move the ball forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Christian. I think there's a lot of exchange that we're going to do and learn from you as well. Great work on Queen Sono. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope it's going to be a continuation of that. Let me move on to Lolade. I hope I'm mentioning your name correctly there.
You're doing well. You're doing well.
I'm doing well. Wonderful. I see Joy FL as well. Joy, it's good to see you there. And we're going to come to you just now after Charles as well.
Okay.
So Lolade, if you mind, give us a brief about yourself, and then we'll move on to Charles.
Thank you so much, Nico. Hello to Roberta, to Christian, to Charles, to Joy. It's such an honor to be here. My name is Lolade Shiambola. I'm the founder of Nor Labs, Nor Press, and Nor Fest. At Nor Labs, we're inspiring and operationalizing Black liberation through art, technology, and community building. At Nor Press, we are crafting a liberated Black future through storytelling. And Nor Fest is the first of its kind virtual film festival, curating the finest aspirational films from across the Black diaspora. I'm currently doing my PhD in world making through art at Cambridge University in sociology. I completed my master's last year at Yale in African Studies, and I'm extremely passionate about concretizing networks across the Black diaspora. I was born in Lagos. I grew up in Missouri, lived in Brooklyn for 13 years. And I've seen every type of Blackness almost, that I could possibly connect with. And, I'm just extremely passionate about who we are and our innate essence as a glorious people, chosen people of God. I'm just excited at this opportunity that we have right now to build a new world and create a liberated future for Black people and all people. So thank you for having me.
Amazing. Well, you're seeing a new kind of Blackness as well on this panel, which is amazing. And we're looking forward to hearing more. I think one of the key things that we want to discuss on this panel is distribution and networking and a lot of that. But yeah, let me move on to Charles. Charles, I'll give you this time to introduce yourself. Yeah, and let us know a little bit about yourself. If you can unmute Charles there, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charles. Roberta, Christian, Lola Day, Joy. Nice to meet you guys. I'm the CEO of Play Network Studios. I just got into the movie industry a couple of years ago. My first movie was Living in Bondage. So right now, what I'm doing is I'm focusing on remakes, trying to retell some classic stories that we had. I watched growing up. So I started with Living in Bondage. I'm doing 2 more this year: Rattlesnake and Neka the Pretty Serpent. Basically, I've acquired like 5 IPs, which I want to retell their stories, and hopefully after that, I would start telling original stories. But my focus is to retell stories that we Africans have that haven't been seen by this new generation. I don't know if that makes sense. So from to movie classics, yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to focus on.
Excellent. That sounds interesting, and especially I hope you'll be able to remake a lot of those classics that we've seen from Africa as well.
Yeah, hopefully.
That have a story that we're trying to showcase. I'll throw it to you guys. It'll be amazing if we can go back to 1640, just as a number, and tell a story of what happened in Africa then. Do we have the records of that story? And if we don't, what do we do? So it's going to be part of what we're going to discuss today. But yeah, let me go to Joy without wasting our time again in these introductions to have Joy effort to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Joy Ifyodite. I'm a distributor, film distributor, aggregator, as well, and film consultant. Blue Pictures Film Distribution is the foremost West African distribution company based here in Lagos, Nigeria. Over about a decade now, we've been distributing contents into the West African cinema and other platforms as well. So we've distributed contents for iconic studios like Warner Brothers, Fox, Disney, and a few independent studios as well, and also Bollywood studios in India. We are a fast-growing independent distribution company. We pride ourselves as one of the distributors that is looking to make positive change in the West African region, especially Nigeria and the other West African continents, as well as Africa. We've done quite a number of content distribution, and we are currently aggregators to Netflix as well. It's been a challenging couple of years, but we've continued to push the frontiers of distribution, and hopefully as we get along, we'll get to see more positives and more benefits as it goes along. Thank you for having me. Excellent.
Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I want us to move into our first part of our conversation here. The African continent and its story and its people. We have had this narrative told by either the Western Bloc, the Americans, or anyone who has an interest of talking about a jungle, the animals, the wild, the barbarics, everything else that you can think of that is not progressive, that doesn't give an accurate representation of our story. That has been told, and it has gone on for years. Prehistorical, even in the film industry, it was starting in Africa or in the world. We're always put in as a reference point to this exotic representation or story. My first question or part of the conversation that we want to throw to the panel today is filmmaking in Africa before and after independence of many of the great nations in Africa. What has changed? Do we have any progress at all? I'm glad there's Nollywood that has pushed its filmmaking from zero budgets to big budgets. The story has remained and they have been consistent, and I'm happy with that. And a lot of boom in filmmaking is happening across Africa. But what has changed pre and after? And for that, how would you describe the African industry now? I'll start probably with Joy after there, because you're part of the distribution and the networking and curating of content. And I'll go to Charles after that.
Okay, I think for Africa, before independence, I would just, I'm not so old, so I will not go into our pre-independence era. So, but, growing up in Lagos, Nigeria, and like Charles rightly said, there are some very interesting contents that we grew up knowing. And those contents, they were very, very strong, and they resonated so much. It reflected our culture, what we stand for, our belief, and all of that. So during the process of, migrating from that, from the DVD eras to now to the digital era, it has been, like you can realistically see that there is progress from what we used to know back then growing up and then what it is now. I think it has, the way that the region is now is fast evolving. Although the Western culture has a way of affecting and pushing us, so, we don't really get to be the babies. We follow after what is, what is trending, what is out there, and then we continue to push our boundaries. And we have this ability to look beyond what our shortcomings are as a nation and as a continent, and continue to evolve and continue to push what our narratives are. I think the progress so far has been, very great. It is, interesting to see how it has continually progressed from before independence, then after independence, and what we are seeing now. It's been great. It's been, for me, growing up, seeing those contents and then seeing the remake and seeing how, production has evolved. It is for me and for, a lot of people who may have seen what production used to be in the DVD era, where, you just shoot movies and go straight to DVD. And then you have marketers who go and sell this content and all of that. But now you have a whole lot of process that goes into production, and from production you see other avenues and platforms that you can monetize this content. So I think it's been a journey, and I would not say it stops now. We continue to move forward as a continent, and I think it's going to only be better. It's going to continually evolve and change.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you mentioned the progression from the different platforms that we use. Funny enough, straight from the camera, straight to the DVD, and straight to the market and selling the film. How amazing was that? If you could imagine the time that we lived in. But the progression is good.
Yeah.
I don't see Charles. I'd ask Charles to come in, but let me go to Roberta and then come to Christian. And then probably Lolade as well at the end there. Roberta, the progression, do you see any change? I'm glad if someone could mention the narratives from before independence, if we have that, if we read that. Not saying we've lived that moment, but if we could just reference it as well, because it's important for this narrative. Any changes that you can see, instead of the African story being told, we are now telling it, and are we doing a good job about it? Any changes that you can point out there, Roberta?
Yeah, so I definitely don't know too much about the distribution side of the business, but as somebody who's looking at it with an investor's lens, what I see is there has been a sort of evolution in terms of, you know, being able to access different African content. And I think there's still the need to provide financing to even bring out more content. I mean, I'll just start with this proverb that is an old African adage that says, until the lion learns to write, the tales of the hunt is always going to be told by the hunter. What is happening is there's a lot of capital outside, and you know, just like you see in other parts of the creative economy, there's always appropriation of our content and culture. And oftentimes that information, because we don't have the capital needed to produce our own content, there's always appropriation. And when that story is being told by the financier, it's often going to be told in a way that definitely benefits them, of course, because they want to maintain the status quo and they also want to play to a certain gallery. So I think what needs to happen, and I like what is happening, especially in Nollywood, and I really am excited that we have producers from that part of Africa here on this panel, because they can also express some of their challenges and also contributions to the industry. But I see that they are trying to control the narrative a lot more and in a very strategic way. And they're also finding strategic alliances with the likes of Netflix to go into mainstream. I mean, I'm a big fan of, Netflix and also watching content. Normally when I go to Netflix, I always want to look at the African films. And I've realized that it's really evolving and improving as time goes. It's really like, it's almost as if the world has embraced our culture. And it's good to be able to position that there. I recently watched something on I've forgotten the name of the documentary series, but it was based on Rwanda and the genocide in Rwanda. And it was really a story that was telling a different side from what we have heard, you know, over the years. And I remember that it was so informative. Like when I was watching the series, I'm like, oh wow, so this is really what happened in Rwanda. There was even a second genocide in the DRC that nobody knew about. But just because, you know, we allowed an African who actually was connected to the source to develop their own story. And I think more of this needs to happen on the continent. We need to come together. And I like what Chris said earlier, because it's really about the diaspora also connecting to the continent and doing things together. There has to be knowledge transfer. There has to be technology transfer. We need to adapt to the way in which the world is evolving. We cannot stay in the old kind of, in Africa, it was always storytelling by I remember when I was growing up, we used to buy the fireside chats, you know, with, having a bonfire and an older person telling stories to the younger generation. These are all great, but we can actually also improve. Yeah, we can still stick to our style, but we can improve the way in which that is disseminated so that it can plug into, international arenas in a way that is more comfortable, in a way that people can accept. And we can't always just stick to our old ways and expect the rest to grow with us. So these are the things that I've seen, and I feel it requires funding. You know, we need to be able to channel the resources to right projects. That's what I've been working on. I'm actually working on a fund that is also going to look at film production, as an investment asset class. We've already started in fashion, and we're looking to expand this into film and music. But what I would like to see is a Netflix, but an African Netflix. You know, we need to have our own content. That, if we need to be able to like develop our own content and then also put our own content online for people to appreciate. It doesn't have to be a foreign company that is coming in to partner with us because even with that, the deal was never going to be, it's never going to benefit, the content creator. It's always going to benefit the person who's distributing or who has the finance or who has the platform. So we need to change how these things are done. And I think it's good that we're having this discussion. And I like the fact that, the Black Stuff International Film Festival are looking to bring like-minded individuals, because this is how we can actually drive the change that we need on the continent. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I totally agree with you. I think I'm glad you mentioned that you're working on certain funds. We're going to be after you as filmmakers, so that we can develop films from your fund. But it's good to not and some of those things. And I'm happy that you have said we need our own African Netflix, and we're gonna have it, absolutely, full of African films, content, and everything that we need on one platform, and many others. Not just one, but we need many other platforms that can also compete. That way, we will have a lot of film development across Africa. Let me come to you, Christian. In terms of your film processes and the involvement in a number of productions, how have you added value to the processes? Not necessarily dating back to pre-independence, but I think as you have joined the process of filmmaking and the film development in Africa, how has been your involvement, and how can you place it? Are we doing good? Are we getting somewhere? Or we still stuck up to our own styles that don't go to par, like Roberta mentioned, that we need to get there and be recognized as the greatest continent for filmmaking?
Well, there's a couple of things. I'll try to keep it short. Yes, the change is obvious to anyone who's been watching. Nollywood, I've done several Nollywood films, concerts across Lagos, television shows all around, Nigeria and South Africa. And what is obvious to anyone who's looking, that the progress is multiplying. The pace of progress is multiplying faster and faster and faster, to the point now where, there's a couple of consistent filmmakers in the Nollywood circuit who, when you look at the film, it could show anywhere in the world at any time, and no one would have the ability to say with fair judgment, oh, this is not up to par. There's a number of them that are doing it consistently, and the challenge that I see is, this idea of becoming quote unquote world class, or Africa to the world, which is a common statement. I always have to ask myself, in this phase of life, which I wasn't thinking the same way, when I was 20, what does that really mean? Tom Cruise is not, Tom Cruise is no different. We're just used to him, right?
Right.
And that becomes immediately a question of exactly the people who are on this panel. Lola Day in her work represents a sort of thinking. Roberta represents a funding. Charles represents a business execution. I represent a practical execution, and Joy represents a distribution. If we took these generalizations, you have everything you need right here to create content that is by Africans for Africans, and would not need one other major element for it to reach its audience. The challenge that I see so far in this area is just that we need structured interactions that speed up this process, because Hollywood and the West and UK and all these, they have the same technology, and technology progresses faster. So if we don't structure our interactions, our networking, our strategies as filmmaking communities on all these different levels, we will not only will we not keep up, we won't even catch up ever, right? Tesla's over here shooting off satellites almost every other weekend, it seems. And if we're not considering who else is on the playing field with us, then we will always be left behind and asking someone to let us in. On both the Netflix shows that I've done in South Africa and Nigeria, the approvals for what I do come from Amsterdam and from Hollywood that directly affect how I can execute, right? Which also directly affects the aesthetic look and the education of the filmmakers in my particular part of that production, right? So these challenges are very real, and we need very specific, targeted processes for advancing these networks. And I've also feel like there's a very significant question that needs to be constantly examined. You know, Tyler Perry is very good at talking about building your own table, which is a theory he's been, you know, pushing for the last several years publicly. Although you can tell from business-wise, he's been doing it for years. Charles is the same way from what I know of him. And that process is what is needed. And we then no longer have to go knocking on someone's door to ask permission to address our own audiences. What Nollywood has done so well, and I think the reason it worked, in my opinion, is that it talks to its people about what they want to talk about in their own language. So of course, everybody who speaks that language comes and buys a ticket and wants to listen. It's an obvious sort of natural human thing, you know? So the more we do that, the less we have to ask the Oscars for permission, the less we have to ask Netflix for permission, you know, and then we can have whole sort of conversations about ourselves to whatever degree we want to, whether it's serious, casual, fun, just financial, any of the above is okay. So the progress is obvious, but I'm looking for, you know, for us to actively interact with business opportunities that are long range thinking, not just for me today in my budget, but for my children and their great grandchildren.
Absolutely. I've always spoken about how certain groupings would, you know, make sure the money circulates within their own, or plant a tree that they know will be harvested 25 years later, which means that's an investment to the son or to the children or to the daughter. And we need to have that kind of a mentality. We're used to just wanting something for the now. And
that's understandable in a sense if you don't have a lot of resources today. It's understandable to think that way, which is why people like those of us on this panel who have more opportunities and access need to make those steps. Not necessarily bring the entire group of audience members along to your particular way of thinking, but bring the ones along who are ready for that, who are already active in their own way to help extend what they're thinking. You know, we have to take the steps we can to help that move forward without expecting, you know, 100% success, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to Charles. Charles, you spoke about, you know, remaking these stories. Would you go back in time and remake a lot of these classics or the stories that we haven't seen on the big screens? And how well are we doing in terms of actually doing that? Is there more and more of the backstory that is being told in progression with what is happening in terms of technology that we've mentioned here? Do we have the resources? You're involved in investing in film, you're involved in cinema, you're a producer too. How do you see us going in this industry on the African bloc?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Charles.
Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to focus more on retelling our old stories. This is Living in Bondage was my first project, and that was the first, you know, ever Nigerian movie that was ever retold or revisited. Nollywood is such a huge market. I just got into the industry a couple of years ago, and it's very exciting because telling the old stories and bringing them into this new generation, and basically merging two different generations. My generation, my parent generation, and those who are like 15, 20 years younger than me as well. So that way you have a broader cinema audience, because you're tapping into from the ages of 18 up until like 60 years old. So I think that in itself is quite lucrative for me as it is, because Nigeria has a lot of untold stories. Do you understand? So apart from retelling old classics, what I'm also doing now is revisiting old stories, like from novels, from books. We have a lot of notable authors who have amazing books that we read growing up in school. So I'm trying to bring these stories into feature film, and then have it for the cinema audience as well. The good thing is that the cinema audience is increasing by the year. I tried to get into Nollywood a couple of years ago. I think, let's say 8 years ago. It didn't seem lucrative to me because the cinema audience wasn't much. But now it's looking like, as the year goes by, the cinema audience increases, which is, encouraging for newcomers like us, encouraging for investors as well, encouraging for banks. I had a meeting with the MD of Sterling Bank. They want to invest in Nollywood now because they're seeing the numbers, and because it's now a lucrative sector. You can now invest more money, because if you don't invest money, you will not get good production. And then if you don't get good production, you won't be able to showcase your work, internationally. Do you understand what I'm saying? So right now, the cinema has given us a platform to make more money, and given us a reason to invest more in the industry, create better movies, and make it more attractive to the world. So now that the world has our audience, I think it's time for us to start telling our stories. Going back to like you said, 16, 14, pick up stories that never, our kids don't even have access to. You understand? Like King Jaja of Opobo. There's a lot of, South African heroes that have, old stories that we need to bring these things back to life and then retell it, to appeal to our kids and our children's children. If we don't start this now, some of our stories will just die off. They will just go extinct. And, I think right now, apart from going to school and reading of this great heroes or great stories, it's an amazing time in life where we can translate these stories into feature film and give them a pictorial understanding of what Africa used to be and where Africa is going to. Explain to them their roots and stuff like that. So me, I'm focusing on telling our own stories, not just Nigeria, Africa. That's why I'm happy for this forum where we can establish a relationship, if possible, have collaboration. There's no reason why, for example, I'm doing a rattlesnake, Neka the Pretty Serpent, which is about 25 years old. And my line producer is a South African. You understand? That's why I'm joint production. Do you understand? So I think this is the time for us to strengthen collaboration. This is the time for us to try and make this work. So I don't know if I've gone off point.
No, you have touched on the next part of our conversation, which is
yes,
which is good. I like to hear the potential. I love to hear people collaborating. I love to hear people saying we're throwing in the money in the productions as well, which means that there's going to be more people involved in making sure the film is there. But I also want to highlight to you also, everybody here, as we're having this conversation, to be aware of the time that we're in. I think COVID came and showed us that, you know what, we as humans, we're not as tough as we thought we are. Something can just come and disrupt everything that we thought was normal, and create a new normal. And I started imagining us, all those things that we see in this sci-fi films, all those futuristic films that we see, and started contemplating, is this what is going to happen? And also, is this what is going to happen on the African continent as well? But this is just a conversation that we're going to have as well. Coming to you, Lolade here. You spoke of Black excellence, having, looked at so many Blackness across the world. But zoning back to Africa, do you think we're telling the kind of Blackness in our films? Are we owning our narratives or our stories, or are we proud? Do we have progression of that story being told as well, from when we started off, remembering what being African is and what we are now? Or we've borrowed so many of the foreign now that we're throwing in our films or in our stories, that then distorts the actual story that we want as an African person, or as an African film. I can also give you a quick example of what happened in my home country, Zimbabwe. There was a film that was done a few months ago, but it was produced by, there was a mix of South Africans and Zimbabweans. The director, the story writer was Zimbabwean, but you'll find the producers and probably part of the funders were not Zimbabwean. And the majority of the crew were also not Zimbabwean, but the cast, probably 99% of the cast was Zimbabwean. But when we then had conversations among his other Zimbabwean filmmakers, there was an argument that no, this is not a Zimbabwean film. It was done by South Africans, so it's not our film. There was that back and forth that then created a distortion, a disowning, and just because the funder was not Zimbabwean, the funder or the part of the crew was not Zimbabwean. And is this what we want as a narrative? Just throwing that to you, Lolade, because you spoke about being proud of our skin and having looked around the many Blackness that we have on this continent. If you can unmute Lolade for me, please. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Nico. I mean, we need 2 hours because there's so much to talk about.
Right.
I'm glad that you asked that because, even to your question earlier about pre-colonial filmmaking in Africa, I think it's so important for us to always start from the beginning, as African people. A lot of our education, our socialization has really been rooted in colonialism, as almost like the founding of Africa and Africans, And so when I talk about us being the original people, what do we know of the history of our continent and the origins of our people? And how can we capture those stories and project them into the future, like what Charles was saying, right? I have a daughter, she's 11, and I'm looking for content for her that tells her about who she is, as an African woman. But how difficult is it to find, that information? So, we've always told our stories, right? From the hieroglyphs in the, ancient Egyptian pyramids to, in Sabiti script, like we've always documented who we are and what we believe in and what we care about. And it's the intentional efforts to colonize us that has, erased and distorted our narrative and our story. It's all distorted now, right? Because we have to accept that in 2020, every African, every Black person on the planet is colonized to some degree or the other, right? And so we are doing the work now of decolonizing our own minds and our own spirits and our own religions and everything. But there's a degree of distortion because we live currently in their world and in their imagination. And so what's really exciting about this moment is we can build a Black Netflix. We are going to be the leading Black Netflix.
Yeah.
The key opportunity that Netflix is missing out on is community building, right? We have to integrate. And in order for us to integrate, we have to understand who we are, right? You can't give what we don't have. So as an individual, I need to know my value and my beauty and my glory in order to see it in you, in the next person. And that also translates across ethnicities, language groups, geographies. So your example of the Zimbabwean and the South African film, the reason why we have this great tension is because of this, this mindset of lack that has been beaten into us for the last 400 years, 500 years of colonization. Egypt was colonized, thousands of years ago, right? We've been colonized for a very long time. So this idea of lack and this lack of an opportunity to tell our stories makes it so that we are, we're combative when we see someone else shining, or but as a Nigerian, I would love to be part of a story that's being told by Ghanaians, right? And be able to tell the same story or different stories from different perspectives. There's no cap on our imagination. There's no limit to the stories that we can tell. We have the opportunity to tell any story that we want right now, whether it's in writing or in film. And I think it's extremely important for filmmakers and the film distribution community, African, focus on African films, to really push new narratives that help us to see the future that we are creating, right? I'm a huge fan of Black Panther. Yes, there was challenges with the film. It wasn't perfect, but it was the first time that we were given a truly universal image of what Black liberation could look like, right? And I think as we put pen to paper, as we pick up cameras, we have an opportunity to create the future. We have the opportunity to script the future. So the stories that have been told in Western and in white sci-fi, we're questioning whether that's the future, but the reality is they are making the future through their storytelling, right? The phones that we use today, the computers that we use today, that was somebody's idea 20, 30 years ago, right? And so they wrote those stories, they put that imagination, into the world, and those things manifested. So it's so important for us, I'm excited about what Christian said. It's so important for us to continue these conversations like what we're having today and really put, just the axe to the grind. So what we're building at NOR Labs is a portal for, African people to come together and really integrate, understand who we are and what we are striving for individually and collectively, so that we can accelerate that process. My undergrad was in computer science, so I'm extremely passionate about using technology, our ancient technology, from the spiritual technology to the technology that we have now. How do we build our own computers? If they're gonna mine all of the resources to build computers from the Congo and start wars there, how do we take ownership of that land? How do we take ownership of that imaginary that says that we can build any technology, any product, any experience that we want as African people, because have that infinite intelligence, that infinite creativity. We can create anything. And so we have to be in agreement about what it is that we want to create. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. And it touches on a number of things that we also wanted to have a conversation on. I'm so glad you spoke about technology and you're passionate about it. COVID has shown us technology, we can utilize it and use it to what we actually want to achieve, and there's no excuses whatsoever. I love Blacklist, and the final season 7, the last episode was affected by COVID, and I was watching it the other time and how they integrated animation and the actual other scenes that they had produced or filmed before COVID shut down. This is what we need to look at. Do we just then sit down and say, oh no, there's COVID, there's no production, we can't produce any content anymore? What do we do next? How do you utilize what we have? You've mentioned about Congo, the resources that are there. There are so many resources in Africa that are just being mined off, taken off to other parts of the world. They come back as, as cameras, as lights, as so many other things that we then buy, expensive items as well. And we can't keep up with the actual technology because they're always gradually, developing the technology as we go. So how do we harness and utilize those? the next question is, do we have the resources and the funding? Roberta, you say there's money, so I'm keeping that in my mind. The money, the financing is there. Roberta said so. Christian, do we have the resources? And Roberta, I'm going to come to you as well and talk about the financing. Do we have it, or is just one of the rhetoric things that we love to talk about as Africans or on this continent and say, oh yeah, we can do this, but do we actually have the resources to start matching up to to what others are doing in Hollywood, Bollywood, and any other platform there, Christian?
Can I just, I'm sorry, I just want to answer something that you raised, because I don't want to forget about it. So I wrote down radio of the future, so even with no money, which we do, we have access to all the money in the world. We just have to, direct our thinking and our expectation in that direction. But it starts with the pen and the paper, the stories that we write, and, just having, I'm sure there was a time on the continent where all we listened to, the stories that we got were through the radio, right? We have the opportunity to tell stories over podcasts. That's an avenue that is growing, and I really would love to see more stories, in that regard. At Norfest, we are accepting submissions right now. So if you're watching and you're a filmmaker, please, and for all of you guys, please submit your films. But we have the opportunity to tell any story at any level that we want. If me and Christian come together and we say, this is a 5-minute script, we could write a 5-minute script about what it looks like to build our own Apple on the continent from the Congo. You know what I mean? Like that micro storytelling can be extremely powerful. And then from there we augment up. But that was the main thing I wanted to say. And I do think that we have, because of the access that, that we all have on this panel, I'm excited to see what kind of opportunities Roberta can share. But, and being in institutions like Cambridge and Yale, knowing that places like Harvard, they have libraries, they buy up these stories. It's important for us to have ownership of our stories, to what Roberta was saying before, but it's also important for us to be in partnership with the institutions that want them, and to be able to, negotiate a fair price for everything that we create.
Yeah. So I think when Christian answers about, having the technology, the gear, and everything. I mean, you worked on Queen Sono and other productions, so I'm guessing we're gonna hear on what we have and what we don't have and what we need to do. And then for you, Joy, I need to also know, because you said you've worked with Fox, Warner Brothers in terms of distribution and stuff like that. That's knowledge there that we want to harness from. And I need you to be able to tell us, are we ready to also create that kind of a level of a network for distribution of our films and productions in Africa? Are we creating that platform, or are we just going to always rush to these bigger platforms and say, oh yeah, we have this content from Africa, can you please take it to be on your platform? So I'll start with Christian. We'll go to Roberta about the resources and the financing. Do we have it? And then come to you, Joy, as well. If you can unmute Christian there for me, please.
Hello, yes. So yes, I mean, the obvious answer is yes, there is some money. There currently is not enough money in the production system, which doesn't mean there's not enough money on the continent. It's just not allocated to the production system yet. One of the things that I think is important to look at, so for instance, and Charles, forgive me if I speak on part of your project, John Demps, I believe, was the DP on Living in Bondage when Charles did that. John Demps is trained in Hollywood and has been, as far as anyone who knows him is concerned, fully African, living on the continent, and psychologically has moved completely to the continent many years ago. But those skill sets contribute to the product being of a certain quality, right? So what happens is we look for a certain amount of money, but really it's a certain amount of people who are thinking the right way about contributing to this progress we're speaking of. right? So Joy as a distributor, I would love to see Joy opening a movie across all the countries across Africa on the same weekend, right? Same day and date openings, create another level of buzz that then a funder like Roberta and the investors who run in her world and business people like Charles can get excited about. So is the money there on a sort of basic generalized level? No, it's not in place to where it's being spent to compete in terms of production quality, access, because money is also about access to screens, access to equipment. But there are people who are doing it, and I hope that we focus on connecting with each other. I got involved in this through an effort to connect some of these dots, right? Through Juliet at Black Star and through association with HBO, which connected me to Mnet, which connected me to Black Star. So these things happen correctly financially when we look for it. One of the challenges is if we're all looking for 100% cash out in the beginning, then no, it's not there, right? Charles mentioned looking at Nollywood and not finding enough enough business case for it earlier on. And I completely agree. I've done several Nollywood films and none of them were a financial benefit to me. I did them because of a more long-term vision to connect and collaborate and for our children and all of that, right? So yes, it's here, but we should not all look for all of our desserts today. And in that regard, then we look around and we say, oh yeah, let's find an hour to connect and talk about what's possible, as Lola Day mentioned, right? Where your thinking then materializes. Oh, let's find a moment and then that becomes, the next opportunity in a month or in 6 months or 3 years, or, some of the things that we're doing, through some of my professional work. I had the privilege of working on the Beyonce Black is King thing. Wow. And I did the South Africa and some of the US stuff. But in the process in South Africa, I said, oh, I'm doing skills development also. So I found a moment to get 10 trainees onto that show. So if you're from a small town outside of Joburg and you get to work on a Beyonce project, on not just 1 3-minute, but one of her premier projects, that's a skills transfer that stays with you for a long, long time, right? Both emotionally, psychologically, and professionally on your resume. These are there's so many steps we can take. So does it make financial sense all the time? No, right? But that's also why we're doing equipment distribution and donation, because those are contributions. So we all have to, I think, do our part to carry the ball down the field, not necessarily always across the finish line.
Absolutely. I'm happy that you mentioned skills development. I think one of the key things that we need to be able to do whenever we get the opportunity, to train, to pass down what we have learned over the years to the next generation. There's a group of youngsters, I'm forgetting their name. I think one of you guys can probably highlight who they are, but what they've done over the years is remaking films. They are amazing. They're lovely.
Yeah.
What is their name, sorry?
Ikorodu Boys.
Ikorodu Boys.
Yes.
Amazing bunch of kids. I've watched and said, I really want to reconnect with these guys, be able to contribute something, donate whatever it is, and see where they're going to go. Because what they're doing is amazing. With the literary, they've actually answered all the questions that we're trying to discuss here. Utilizing what you have. And
no money, no distribution.
Distribution. I mean, they have the crazy distribution going on right now. I think most of us here have their little video in their phones or somewhere, and we'll pass through what they've done. But these guys are just using their phones, whatever they find in their backyard, and remake the amazing stuff. Okay. You could, if you've watched the film and watched these guys, you fall in love immediately. So this is what we want. And this is what I'll probably push to all of the panelists and those that are watching us. let's look down to what we have, and you know, in terms of the skills, the potential, and say, guys, let's go to these kids and let's develop a film with them and see what happens. It becomes an amazing development in them. We have so much young talent that is out there, so many others that are doing comedy and stuff like that, that we need to take on and harness before Netflix can can steal them from us, because Netflix will look for that talent.
And that's what happened, right?
Yeah.
Those boys blew up when Netflix decided they were cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's a simple thing like that. They can put a simple tweet that this is amazing. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
They're gone. Let's go to you, Roberta. These kind of kids, resources. The money, that the finances that we want to throw into, you know, into the circuit, into the film productions. How can people access and benefit from it? What is your idea of the financing of the film or the creative sector on the African bloc? How do you want it done? In probably a few words before we go to the next part, as we're about to round off our conversations. If you can unmute Roberta for me, please.
Okay, so it's very interesting that we are actually talking about the financing and I mean, just to also dovetail from what Christian talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. The capital is available. That's the only difference. I know that the reason why we are not accessing capital for the creative economy, especially in Africa, is because of the fragmented nature of the sector. So the creative economy is actually put into what we call the CCI, which is the culture and creative industries. And that alone has 14 subsectors. So that's very fragmented. So you film, music, gaming, architecture, art, fashion, these are all subsectors of the creative economy. So from an investor's perspective, if something is so fragmented, they don't see how that could potentially scale, right? So if you're looking at economies of scale, because normally when you put money into a venture, you want to see how that could scale so that you can also have a good return, what we call in private equity terms, it's like it's either a 2x or a 3x return on an investment that you've made that you need to return to the people who have invested in you. So like it's not your funds, it's someone else's fund coming in as an indirect investor, and they are entrusting you to put the money into an asset class that will give them back a return on investment. So it's a huge task from the investor side, from whoever it is who's the asset manager, in the case like for me, for my fund, and then also for the creative. So you have also 3 different groups who are very frustrated because, first of all, from the investor's lens, we don't see quickly how we can return that funds. Get the ROI, return on investment. Creatives also need funding, and they need a certain form of funding, which is patient capital. So funding that would be with them for years before you actually see a return. Okay, and I'll come to a solution. These all sound like problems, and I've actually taken my time to develop a solution in 2 years, and this is what is working. And I think this is what Africa needs. And then from the investor's point of view, you know, they're giving you money to a blind pool of assets and projects that they are not really. Just think about it. If I'm sitting in Europe or in the Middle East or in the US and I am a billionaire, or let's say I have 100 million in my account, and you come to me and you ask me for money for the creative economy, it's going to be extremely difficult because, first of all, it's fragmented. There is no infrastructure that is governing where the money is going into. So it becomes a very difficult sell, you know, to an investor. So what we started to do is to create that infrastructure and the ecosystem. And I started this in fashion. I started it by forming a foundation that was giving money to fashion designers, supporting them with the education, because education is important. When we talk about infrastructure, it's not just building intangible. I'm talking about the intangible infrastructure that people often neglect, that but that soft power is so important. And I believe that is actually what Africa can rely on to develop its, economies. So that intangible, you talk about education, you talk about intellectual property, these are all parts of that infrastructure that needs to be built. And this is what you need to bring in some government money. Governments need to be part of this. You need to bring in, because government money comes with softer terms. These are like more patient capital. Then the private sector can step in. But as you're even bringing in the funding, you also need to create the policies that would ensure that the funding coming in actually transforms things on ground, so that you're not just pouring money down the drain. So it's a very, very daunting task, but I believe that we're there now. So we created a fund 2 years ago. We set up €100 million Creative Arts Fund. It was quite challenging to put the pieces together, but we did, and we've launched and we've done our first investment in fashion. And now we're looking at other parts of the creative economy. We're interested in 4 things. We're interested in film production, music production. We're still doing fashion, but we're focused more on the manufacturing aspect. And then we're interested in gaming. So these are the 4 things that we're looking in the African context. We're not necessarily, looking at, well, we're interested in, for our creative businesses that we invest in, to also have the opportunity to, because when you're looking at private equity, you have a very limited time frame. So if I'm investing in something for 8 years, where are they going to exit? Like, who's buying that business? We need to create that ecosystem at each level, so that from the very bottom, when you're creating content, somebody's taking it, the business grows to a certain extent, and then there should be somebody that, you're going to exit to, right? So that is the model that you need to think about when you're talking to investors. So when you start your film production company, who could buy you out? Would it be a big producer out of Hollywood, or like, we need to create all of that. We need to have all of these things in mind. And normally creative businesses start with passion, and they don't think about the infrastructure. And that is why funding becomes difficult, because if you don't think about the infrastructure and all the hurdles that you can face as you grow, sometimes you even don't need a lot of capital in the beginning. You need just a little bit, but people would go and ask for a larger number. And when you get that number, you're not able to grow the way you should. So like, these are all things that we need to address. And I always look at it from every level of the supply chain. So I'm looking at the early stage businesses that need grants and money that would never be paid back. Right. And you need to then support them with mentorship and platforms to accelerate their businesses. Then you need to look at your SME level businesses. So startups are very different from SME. They need a different level of funding. So we also do that. And that is more like what we call Series A type, Series B type funding. These guys would need that. They would need opportunities to scale. And we need to, as Africa, one of the interesting opportunities that I see here is we don't actually need outside. Yes, we need outside capital, but we can also rely on our own AfTA, which is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, to look at ways in which we can export what we're creating to different parts of Africa. And that will give us that economies of scale we're missing. So instead of working in silos where you have the film industry in Ghana and the film industry in Nigeria and South Africa, we can start, working together as a unit. And that gives us economies of scale, and that would attract more foreign capital, just the way it is done in other sectors like real estate, oil and gas, mining, and all of that. It's all important for investors, because investors see the scale, they see the exit. But if we come together as a unit, then we create the opportunity for them to see us as a potential asset class that will return the investment. So yes, funding is available, but infrastructure is very important to attract that funding. Working together as a unit is very important. And we cannot just look at money and neglect things like education and intellectual property. It's all part of it. We cannot just focus on private capital and leave government out. Government needs to be part of the discussion. And then one last thing that I'll say is that I see the creative economy as a tool for inclusive growth and development of the continent for two reasons. Number one is because Africa has a very young population. We have 65% of our population are under the age of 25. So to me, instead of government putting policies in place to create jobs within government, they should focus more on entrepreneurship, development, and giving money to young people. And the creative economy actually is the highest employer of young people. So that is a solution to a huge problem right there. Number two, women. The creative economy is the second largest employer of women. So if you talk about gender, inequality and all of these issues, you create a thriving environment for the creative economy to do well, then you also support women economically as well. So these are all things that but we need to come together as a collective. Creative economy needs to be part of bigger policies, government policy. We should be very integral in AFTA. We should be very integral within the African Union system. We need to be there and we need to address these things and channel the funding. So my fund is 100 million. There should be more funds like this, on the continent, because the potential is huge. But what it is investors are not seeing the potential. They're not. I sit with investors all the time. And the moment you start talking about film, and the banks are now starting to understand because they see it in Hollywood. They see how, the industry. But if you're talking to investors who are not banks, because banks will loan money to you and they'll charge you an interest. And if you're not able to pay, they come after you, right? It's a very different thing when you're talking to people that have private capital and it's patient capital. It's a different conversation and something that can actually grow industries. It's not just funds from banks, but the investors are really not getting the bigger picture. And I think we all need to come together as a unit to really address this thing, because I see the potential, you see the potential, but we're working in silos. We need to come together as a unit. I put on the chat platform that I think we should start a working group, as part of this panel with everyone here who's in the industry, to we all have a role to play, but we need to start conversations and, turning them into, practical terms. Exactly. So, so that's my contribution on that.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned all those things. Patient capital is number one here. And return on investment is not what we look at mostly as filmmakers. You want capital now to do your film and think about making money later as a filmmaker. But, you have executive producers that are involved in all those processes that are looking at what to get after this. Is it a commercial or is it just, a funded one that has a certain messaging into the film? Who's giving you money to do what for your film is also what matters. But I want to go to Joy. Joy, I mean, you've been in the film distribution and sales for over 15 years. I'm glad that you have been in that area for a while. But my probably next ask will be, do we really understand the distribution process as Africans, or are we taking advantage of what we have and what you have developed over the years? And I also want you to have this in mind as you're probably answering this this question from a contribution here from Juliet Asante. The question is, I'm curious as well about the opportunity to integrate Black Hollywood with African filmmakers. The music space is doing it already. We are calling our Black communities to come back home, year of return and beyond, the return in Ghana on our mind. How do we bring our Blackness together as well? So I think in terms of distribution of films, when you sell the films, the thinking, is it always, I'm going to go to Fox, Warner, and Netflix? Is there any other platform that is, doing it in Africa that we can sell and say and push our films and be that strong platform? And also coming back to pay homage to the filmmakers and giving them the resources to make more films. What are we doing in the distribution and sales and funding area in our films in Africa?
Thank you so much. I think distribution in Africa is, I will speak on, try to compare what we have with Hollywood and what we have here currently. You spoke about the Ikorodu boys, so I want to talk more about from there. I want to reference the Ikorodu boys. You can see from what the Ikorodu boys are doing currently is trying to push, to the Western world that we can actually do this with limited resources, and that's how Nollywood grew from. So you can see that whether or not we have all the funding or capital that we need to produce our film, we can create something out of nothing and market and commercialize it and make sure that it gets to the people who wants to see the movie. Now for Hollywood, and then working closely with all these foreign iconic studios, you discover that they have access to funding. They already have their processes all well planned and mapped out. They have their strategy, they have their marketing strategy already planned out, even before they go to production. In Nollywood, sometimes distributors are not in the mix. They only come after, the production has been done, and then you are being handed a product and, you have to push that product, or they tell you, oh, this is what, I want to push. But then let us look at a reverse model where a distributor is actually involved in the entire process, from your scripting to your production, to your marketing, and to the sales of this film. I think it is so critical as a continent that we realize the importance of distributors and what they bring, the commercial elements they bring into your production. Because Roberta was talking about return on investment. How can you guarantee return on investment when you were never in the process? You don't know how the fundings were got in. You don't know, what the target market is, what is the strategy, what are people buying now, what is the market saying now. You have to know all this, and you have to be able to truthfully answer this question as a production, or as a producer, or as a creative. When you have all that properly outlined, then the next step is talking about platforms. What platforms are you really producing this content for? Are you producing the content straight to DVD? Are you producing this content straight to cinemas? Or do you want to do like a cinema and, a premium VOD release? Or, those are the combinations, and those are the processes and strategy that you have to put into your production, and what you want to do in terms of strategy, and in terms of you having a head start for your production. And I think in Africa, there is a lot of, working with various markets. I see that there is that lack of unity. So, and then Roberta also mentioned that as well. So I think in Africa, the markets that are really strong is South Africa, West Africa, East Africa. Those are strong markets. But as a distributor working from Nigeria, I would say, because I will only shed light, with my work and the processes I've been through, and then what, I have noticed, working in these various markets. The Nollywood contents, when they are being exported into South Africa, for instance, they don't have an audience, or maybe there's an audience, but there is no acceptance from the distributors there. The distributors will say, oh, maybe, no, I don't think this will work for my market and all of that. So even there's a film by AY, one of the producers here in Nigeria, that was shot in South Africa. That film also did not do so well in South Africa. So you see that, the acceptance level is so low. So you produce movies and then they don't travel. Not that they don't have the capacity or potential in them to travel, but there is always that hurdle. The market, the way it is structured, you cannot cross certain milestones in certain markets. So it is so difficult as a distributor. And there you have Hollywood. When they are releasing a single movie, you see it is worldwide release. you know, a production company like your Disney will release Avengers and Black Panther, and then it is boom everywhere all around the world. I feel as an African producer, they want to see this. The banks are not funding because they cannot see how am I going to get my money back. Let's say I have a budget of 100 million plus, production budget. Okay, so where are the platforms you are going to monetize? How many screens are you looking at? You know, those are the questions. They want to know how you are going to monetize this content you are producing. You know, even if it's a great story, we want to see how, where is the path we are going to take, the distribution path. How are we going to get it to multi-screens around the world? But Hollywood has it, they have it all figured out. If they are releasing a movie, it goes straight to all, in fact, to the ends of the earth. And then they have multiple other online platforms where their contents are being monetized. But we cannot say that in Africa. We cannot say that in Nigeria, for instance, because, you know, now we have Netflix, and then everybody is rushing to Netflix. You know, there is so much Netflix can take, and I try as much as possible to enlighten producers to let them know that Netflix is just one platform out of so many online platforms that you can monetize your content. Yes, they might say, oh, I don't know that. That's why you have film sales agents. That's why you have distributors who can work your content for you and make sure that you have, you know, your content all across all these platforms. And in case of, you know, other countries, we really need to, in Africa, just have that unity, that oneness, where I have a content, where Charles has a content, like living in bondage. We can even do like into local languages. It depends on, you know, what you are asking for and what your market wants. How are we able to, you know, watch Bollywood content? They speak Indian, you know, and then it's being subtitled, and then we embrace it. Then what about our African content? How have we been able to make sure that we accept it in the various markets that we have? I think it's incredibly important that we have that as Africa, as, you know, various markets, which is, you know, which we all have, you know, pop print and our prints in, where we can really, you know, influence the market and make sure that we speak to them about this content. I'm very happy what Canal Plus is doing. Canal Plus, they are taking this African content and then they are, you know, translating it to, you know, the French version. And then it's incredible how the acceptance is. And I'm talking about the Francophone Africa now. Then what about the English-speaking African countries, where we have strong industry like your South Africa, like East Africa, where you have Kenya, Uganda, you know, Tanzania. We need all these screens. We need them. If producers have to make money, we need the screens, we need the platform, and it cannot be only Netflix. It has to be more than Netflix. We need the Apple in, we need Hulu in, we need Disney Plus in, we need all this Apple TV and all of that. So I think, you know, looking at that and trying to, sometimes when I hear filmmakers trying to compare, you know, Hollywood and Hollywood, I'm saying these guys have everything all figured out. You have to compare apples with apples, not apples with oranges. So, you know, these are the, you know, conversations. If I have other distributors from other regions, from other continents, I want to engage them. I want to see how we can partner, how we can get these contents onto their, you know, various platforms, VOD, TVOD, AVOD, the airlines, even to their cinema screens. We need additional cinema screens. In Nigeria, currently, we have 218 screens, but it's not enough because you have other competing titles, and then there's Hollywood there's Bollywood, you know, so we really need more screens for the producers to start to see revenue, even if it's marginal. Let's start seeing that collaborations in Africa. Let's start seeing what works, what we can push, you know, out there, and not having a situation where it's like cap in hand. You are going to the main studios and you are begging, I have this content and I want. No, they have their own movies, I believe, that they want to push. But like somebody mentioned here, I don't know if it's Lola, they mentioned that we need our own Netflix in Africa. We need our own platform that we can, you know, make sure that all our contents go into that platforms with, you know, our narratives, where our stories are being told it is the way we want it to be told, not the way someone, because you are funding the movie, you can say, oh no, this doesn't work for us, take it out. But then you are diluting our narrative, and that's not what we want. So I think, going forward and in summary, I think, unity, is so important for me as a distributor. And I think as producers as well, they will really echo what I'm saying, that, look, I cannot produce a movie for over 100 million naira. And then I really don't know where I'm taking this. Okay, apart from cinema and Netflix, what else? You ask yourself. So it is really, for me, I can empathize. I know what it means for you to churn out that, maybe because I'm an entrepreneur, I know what it is for you to bring money from your pocket and actually fund your movie. Some of these producers, they do self-funding from friends, from loved ones, for the passion. So they want to get that story out there. But then they don't recover. Most of the time, they don't recover these monies because there is no platform. So it's so important. I'm so happy for this platform, this opportunity to be on this panel and for us to discuss these issues. I will not call them issues, challenges that we have in the continent. And I think, with more of these engagements, we'll be able to move forward positively. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely. I'm happy you mentioned all those things, Joy, because it's important to understand that when you're doing your film, you're gonna need an audience after. You're not just producing a film and it ends there. There has to be an audience. And what is your target audience? Where is this film going? And I'm happy that we've started to see a lot of our productions, either they're in English being translated to the Francophone community, so that there's a full appreciation of our content. There are a lot of languages on Africa on the block. Someone said we should stop calling Africa a country. We have so many countries in here that are representing so many cultures, but we're connected by the one thing that we are, and what makes Africa so great. I want us to conclude this conversation. We have spoken about all these amazing things that we want to see that we're doing, and where we want to see Africa go individually and stuff like that. And I was writing off a few things here that I just want to throw to you guys and be reminders of what we are. I saw individualism as one of the key things that has robbed us of an opportunity to tell a great story. I saw pulling each other down is one of the things that is slowing down progress on the African filmmakers block. Infrastructure. I believe infrastructure is there, but it's locked out in the individual people or platforms. It's my stuff. I don't want anybody else to use it. And as long as I'm not involved in that film, you're not going to get access to it. And if I get something that I know will benefit the film community, I want to hold on to it. I was surprised when earlier in my development days in the film and TV, where you then go to a certain person's house. They're not involved in the film or TV, but you realize they have a lot of equipment sitting out at their home. They're like, oh yeah, I got this. I was hoping to do this later. But I'm saying we're doing stuff now. Why are you holding stuff? Give us to utilize that equipment or resources and let's work together. We don't have that. We talk too much and do less. We have a lot of talkers on our continent that love this kind of platforms. Sorry to say, guys, but we need to move from having these platforms that we just hear talking too much to actually doing stuff and showcasing what we're doing from this kind of things that would have done. We'd love to have these reminders once in a while where we come and discuss how we're progressing and how we're doing it and how we should work together and talk about the new stuff that is going on. I wouldn't have imagined having to be in the same platform with Christian right now and learning all the things that you have done. Joy, over 15 years in the distribution and sales. Lolade, you are gifted and you have this technology that we need to harness now. Such a time as this. You are the key people that we want. And how do we get access to you guys? How do we harness the resources that you have and create an amazing Black Panther series that we are developing and owning and telling the true side of our story? How do we do that? Guys, in conclusion, let me start. I don't know if Charles is still with us, but if not, I'm going to start with you, Lolade. In conclusion, how are we going to work together now that we've discussed all these things? What are you going to do to make sure we have access to you, we have access to what you can do, and we move forward and we start creating a lot of content and helping each other and developing this industry that we yearn for? If you can unmute Lolade for me, guys.
Thank you. All praises to all of you guys. So much genius here. So much enlightenment that's happened on this session. So I appreciate each and every one of you, and the audience, the community chiming in. How do we stay connected? How do we move forward? I think what's most important, because like you said, we're very good at talking, right? We have panels like this every single day, and then we just keep on having the panels. And definitely there is progress from these dialogues, but it's quite slow because it happens in a very disjointed and siloed fashion. And so what we're building at NOIR Labs is an integrated community, a centralized place where we can aggregate all of these resources and all these people. So I've dropped a link in the chat to join our Slack community. We're building a Slack community, very nascent. And I would love, I know we have a WhatsApp group with everyone here. I would love to really set a date for the first working group meeting, and use Slack, use the technology. I'm going to be creating some content on technology because I recognize that our people, we're just not very into it, and if we're going to do this work and we're going to integrate and we're going to accelerate this process, then we need to really be up on the newest technologies. And a lot of it is very accessible, low cost, et cetera. And so with someone like Roberta able to, infuse a nice chunk of money so that we can invest in platforms. We have mock-ups for a platform. I think, Christian, you saw it.
I like that you mentioned a nice chunk of money. Roberta, do you hear that?
We have, we can use exclusively African talent. We're already working with our designer in South Africa, our coders in South Africa to build, a gorgeous platform that puts Facebook and Instagram and all of them to shame. So we can really start here, staying connected, continuing these conversations and setting goals. Part of the platform design is that we set goals and we hold each other accountable to those goals as individuals, as groups, as collectives. So it's very important that we, make this next step, schedule the next step today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for that. And thank you for being on this panel and sharing your skills and what you have. Let me come to you, Christian. What can we harness from you? What do we need to do next as we're developing this amazing content full of stories that we haven't yet touched on?
Well, Roberta and Lolade both mentioned the thing that I think is most crucial in the very near future, which is that we have to organize and strategize. Roberta mentioned networking groups, and Lolade, as I know for a fact, is doing it online. It takes more than an hour. It takes more than a year for somebody like myself or anybody else in this group to coordinate what is a good business condition to integrate with what Joy is doing, right? It takes time. And until we commit time to communicating, we can't really discover the full potential. So regardless to me of what each person's personal or business focus is, we have to come together on a regular basis in some version of discovery, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's as a group online, or whether it's in person. My personal experience was in working on projects that started in Nigeria and then spread out around 7 or 8 different countries on the continent, I would constantly take time out of my time to do the skills development thing, or to get up and get out and meet and network and collaborate so that those things could come to fruition over a year or 5 years or, you know, a long time. And that to me is the primary issue of the way I like to do it. I say yes to something. If I see a thing, if I see what Lola Day is doing, I say yes to participating. If I see what others on this platform are doing, like what Juliet is doing with Black Star, I say yes to participating. And then we can develop over time specifics that work for each of us, or how we can support those who are not on the same path with us in a, you know, a less specific way. I'm cool with that. You know, I mean, we can't all be in perfect alignment, but we can all come together and strategize on where we can each contribute. Joy mentioned doing a project that connected with South Africa and that it didn't necessarily do well there. Okay, so now that filmmaker learns, okay, I can't get 100 ticket sales, I can only get 50. So that 50 ticket sales goes into their budget. Then the budget is more expanded in that way. Yeah, so these races aren't won overnight. And so like Lola Day does a online sort of gathering, what used to be probably like a dinner at somebody's house, you know? So those things are to me the first step, because we each have 1,000 different ways to contribute and many different ideas about what's the most important or which way will be the most effective and what our individual concerns are. I'm just concerned that we start and that we talk to each other directly in order to discover what's possible. Where I'm at now, I've discovered many, many things that I had no idea existed, you know, 3 years ago or 5 years ago. So I say, let's, as they say, let's just do it, because film is the major weapon across the entire world these days. I should say media, not just film. Media is the main weapon across the entire world as of right now.
Absolutely, and I agree with you there. Discoveries, a lot of things that I've learned from Joy, and I'm going to come to you as you conclude, Roberta. Where can I get the money?
Well, one thing that I would like to also add to what Lolade and Christian said is I want us to do this working group because it's important for us to build off of such a platform. Again, there have been so many talk shops, and honestly, I just want more action as well. In terms of money, I'm going to share with you. You can I put my email on the platform, so you can email me so I can share more with you, because we're now developing the pipeline for our film, music, and gaming projects that we are looking at for IFAC. So you can contact me, and then I'll share more information with you on that and how to go about it. Of course, there's an investment committee, so it goes through the regular channels of accessing funds. So bear with us, but I think as we go on, we'll be able to solve some of the challenges that the industry is facing. But one other thing that I'm looking to do is, and I'm going to have a conversation later on with Black Star, is one, I do a lot of these competitions, right, where we get people to come together and pitch for funding. And I'd love to see if we could develop such a thing, because I know that most of the time for our fund, for instance, we're targeting established businesses where we're going to give them money for equity. So it's a typical private equity model. And in some cases, also very established businesses, production companies that need debt. But I also realize that those that are developing ideas are often left out. So just to go from ideation to, let's say, something that you can, in tech, what we call prototype, like in the creatives, what you can actually put an IP around that, because once you have IP around something, you can commercialize it and even get more funding. So the idea is to create a competition, and we can do it in partnership with Black Star. maybe we run a competition, and then maybe next year around the festival, we kind of announce the winner, and our fund can then fund this idea. And what I would like to see up from that, and we can develop it together. You know, like I always say, like the Renaissance began with just a few people coming together, like-minded people coming together in a room in Harlem. So we could also, you know, come together, create this idea that we actually want funding for. We run a competition, and we get creatives, you know, to pitch the idea, and then we develop something around it that we can eventually bring production budgets around, and even potentially take it to one of these big distributors. But if I get involved in something, I'm always very, very concerned about strategic positioning and really projecting our image on international platforms with excellence. So it just cannot be. So I'll just give you an example of what was done in fashion. We partnered with Vogue Italia, which is one of the Condé Nast brands in Italy, and we did a competition called Scouting for Africa. And we ended up selecting 2 designers, one from South Africa and one from Nigeria. And they were both giving the opportunity to showcase their work in Milan Fashion Week. So I want to do something like that also in film, where we, you know, also get the young creative minds funding, and then the infrastructure support to develop something that is big, that can be showcased, or potentially even go on international film festivals. So that's my idea. And I would love to have everyone on this platform in a WhatsApp group to develop that. First, we start in partnership with Black Star as a competition. Then we can look at how that idea can go from, you know, just a simple idea to getting the production budget it needs to develop something big. And I think that is, to me, is something we can all do together, and we can, of course, provide the capital to fund whoever the winner is.
I absolutely agree. I thank you for mentioning that. I'm also happy that this is being recorded. So it's on record. Everything you guys said and promised is on record. We're going to action these things from here. But guys, I want to take this opportunity to thank you. We have spoken for a while now. We can go on talking until we're all extinct on this African continent without having actually done anything. But we are doing something. This is the start. And we have a panel that has vast skills here. Financing is there, guys. You've heard that. You know, the distribution and sales is that. Just don't do the films for your family. Do it to sell to everybody. And the distributors, the agents are there. We have the technology to do it. We have to harness what we have in terms of technology and utilize it. The skill is here. You've heard Lolade touch on that. The production processes. How do we, you know, harness the skills from those that have done it over time and being involved in big budgets? They're also here. Christian, thank you for, you know, giving us your time and, you know, the knowledge, and also offering your skills to be able to train others. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Charles was here. He's involved in retailing and remaking the African films or the classics and other things that he wants to do. Let's utilize the skills. Let's you know, communicate and continue. I want to thank the African Film Consortium here. Mikhail is here and he's going to conclude this conversation for us. The guys from Black Stars, thank you. Thank you very much for having to organize this and running the festival despite all that is against us. COVID came and thought, you know, we can't do it. We're doing it. And we're doing it virtually with everyone involved across the world. So thank you very much for that. I'll leave this time to you, Mikhail. Please unmute Mikhail for us. Our lovely host from Black Star, if you can unmute Mikhail, or else I'm going to conclude this and we forget.
Unmute. Okay.
I
want to say thank you for being part of this conversation. first to Black Star International Film Festival for creating the opportunity for us to converge. It's always exciting when we get to bring people together to share ideas, because I believe Africa is the future of world cinema. And for everyone who's been on the panel, Christian, Lola Day, Charles, Juliet, Roberta, Nico, thank you very much for making this happen. It's the conversation needs to continue, and that is one of the reasons why we had established the Pan-African Film Consortium to unite African filmmakers from around the world, and then having collaborators, people like Christian, whose efforts cannot be underrated, sharing knowledge across the continent for almost nothing. It's difficult. I'm sure if we need to bring people like Christian with all the resource knowledge that they share in Africa, it will be a huge budget, but then this is Christian doing this for us. And of course, every other person, the information shared by Roberta has been very useful. I'm sure a lot of people would learn one or two things about financing for film. And then Loladi, we hope to be part of your festival and see how we can collaborate and make it stronger. And to Juliet Asante, thank you for making Black Star International Film Festival happen for us all. To Joy Diete, you're amazing. You're just like, one very quiet achiever. You're making things happen across the continent and especially for Nigeria. Thank you so much. Nico, thank you for moderating this session. You did a great job, and we hope to have you on more sessions in the future. To all the people who have been part of this conversation, I say thank you. Charles, I think Charles is gone. We appreciate the work Charles has been doing, financing remake of films in Nigeria. It's not easy to have people invest such the kind of monies is putting into film projects, and want to appreciate his efforts. We believe that we can all collaborate to grow the African film industry. Recently, myself, Juliet, and a number of festival directors would come together to establish the African Association of Film Festival, and we believe that that should be another platform where our stories can be showcased. It's very important that we as Africans tell our stories. I'm wondering why we're not even telling the Mansa Musa story, which is one very rich story. No one is thinking in that direction. Maybe we all should come together and think about how to make a story, the Mansa Musa story, work for us all. And before Hollywood comes to hijack the opportunity,
I'm sure they already started.
Oh, they're talking about it. They are indeed talking about it.
Okay, so you see, that is one story that we should, as Africans, own, but the conversations that I will ensure we keep in touch with everyone. We would, everyone on this platform, I would share information, and then we look at ways that we can collaborate and everything. And of course, the Black Star International Film Festival, Philippa, Julius Asante have always been, Juliet, sorry, it's Asante. Yeah, the name changed. So very African. So we'll continue the conversation. I would keep in touch with everyone. And I believe that together we can make Africa great again. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
All right. And then before we round off, remember tonight to expect great performances. We have Ria Boss and Tolu Daddy, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And the festival actually ends tomorrow. Two panels, a panel session on why film festivals matter, and an award ceremony.
Yeah, we all should be at the closing.
Absolutely. We have to be there. We have to be there. Since this is more inclusive than previously, everyone has to attend. Our only excuse will be connectivity, but we have to attend. But guys, thank you very much. And this is the end of our session. Goodbye and good night.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you.
The biggest film festival in Ghana, the Black Star International Film Festival, invites you to the first ever live virtual festival dubbed Connect from September 24th to 27th, 2020. Connect and network with international filmmakers online. Watch over 20 new films from amazing filmmakers in Ghana and beyond. Learn about filmmaking and acting from amazing international filmmakers online. Watch amazing performances from budding Ghanaian artists Rhea Boss, Tolu Daddy, Boyd, Asi, and Beryl. Visit our website on www.bsiff.org to register and be part of this amazing virtual experience. Stronger together.